Hey everybody, it's Allison. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to have fun with the Waffle Flower Pawder Day release. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is such a cute release, and there's also a lot of other stuff going on in November for Waffle Flower. There's a lot of gifts and giveaways and sales and stuff like that. So stick with me till the end. I'll go over all of that. But for now, let's take a look at this new release. This is the November 2025 release. As always, there's a bunch of dies and stamps and stencils. So let's take a look at this first card. This features the cool Pup Die-n-stencil set. And here's the main die. And I cut all of these out in white so you could see them. There's the skis and all the separate pieces. And here is the stencil. And it is one set. The stencil comes with the dies. And the stencil is numbered. And there's also numbers on the die cuts. Really, it's easy to know what goes where with these stencils. But it's nice that Waffle Flower does this. And there are separate dies for the sweater, scarf, and hat. So you can have a little bit of dimension if you want, or not. All right, so I put my little dog on my grip mat, and I have the first stencil here. I'm going to start with Misty Coast. I'm going for a very light colored, I'm going for a white dog. So this first stencil does kind of just the details on the dog. And so I'm doing this in gray because I want the mouth to be gray, but now I'm going to come in with black. This is just black soot, Distress ink. And I'm going to go ahead and color the ear, and then I'm going to color part of the nose, or the nose. And I'm going to come in with these masking corners stencil. There are 3 pieces to the stencil set. You're going to see me use these a lot. I use these a lot whenever I stencil now. They're so handy. It's, instead of having to use masking tape. So I do go over the eyes a little bit with that black as well. Now this is still the first stencil. I just shifted it a bit for the bottom area because I really was focused on lining up the top area first. I wasn't really looking at the bottom. So again, I'm coming in with that Misty Coast and going over lightly. Now the tail, I'm going to come back in with the black. There are areas of the dog that I wanted to be black. I meant to add some black spots, but I forgot. So here's the next stencil, which is the hat. And I'm coming in with Limoncello and by the way, most of the inks I'm using today are from PinkFresh. And now this next stencil, it's hard to see, but this is going to color the scarf. And there's this area right here that I guess I must have saw like a sliver of his mouth. So just to be safe, I'm covering it with that masking corner stencil. Now I'm coming in with sheer freesia. And by the way, this is not a normal color combo for me. I don't think I need to tell you that. I normally, especially for a winter scene like this, would reach for my turquoise and my bright greens, but I wanted to try something different. Now, like I said before, there are separate die cuts for the sweater, scarf, and hat. So you might be wondering why I'm bothering inking these 3 parts on the main body. I just like to have color underneath because even when you glue those pieces on top, you can sometimes see the piece underneath or the part underneath. Maybe you glue it ever so slightly off or you look at it from the side. So I like having the base colors on there. And plus I can see if I like the colors together. So now I'm going to ink up the individual pieces, starting with the sweater. And I'm going to use the same colors, so I'm going to come in with this Limoncello. I'm going to add the hat in. Since it's going to be the same color, I can just ink both at once. Now I could just ink blend both of these, without the stencil. I could just ink blend the die cuts. But the stencil's keeping the ink off of my grip mat, and plus I have to add these details anyway with the stencil. So I'm coming in with Citron to add these little details or the shading. And here's the sweater to add the shading. Again, the same color, Citron. And I'm just peeling it up to make sure that I'm happy with how dark I got that before I lift the stencil entirely. All right, so for the scarf, again, I'm going to come in with that same color I used before, which is Sheer Freesia. And just quickly ink blend that. And then the next stencil adds the shading for the scarf. And for that, I'm going to use Hydrangea. Such pretty colors. And I don't often use purple, so it's good to get use out of it. Now I've put the scarf back into that first opening, and I'm using my shader brush 2+ to add a little more shading to this. Now I do end up doing something a little different with the scarf later, but I do add similar shading like this. And here's the little hand. You'll see where that hand goes soon. I'm going to use that same Misty Coast to add the little paw detail. Now because my dog is white, I'm coming in with my cheap little dauber and inking up the edges of the die cut, but only on the white areas. This dauber is good for doing that because it's not soft, so it's not going to squish over the sides. All right, this is the Snowy Hills stencil, and we're going to make our background panel now. There's 2 stencils to this, and we're going to start with this first one. Now there's also this Snowy Hills die. This works with this stencil. It is sold separately though, and I'll be using this later this month, but I just wanted to show how that matches up with that. All right, now the stencil has markings for an A2 panel, which is what I have right here on my grip mat. This is my 7.5 by 11 grip mat. I'm going to use a different color for the sky than I am for the highlights on the snow, so I'm going to mask off the bottom part. And that's just in case I get, aggressive with my inking and I accidentally pull my brush too low. I'm going to be using Distress Oxides for this panel. And I'm starting with Shaded Lilac at the top. This is the sky part. And when I start off for the trees, I'm inking away from the trees because sometimes stencils like this can be a little fragile. So I was just being a little careful at first. Now I'm coming in with Faded Jeans, and I'm starting at the top because I want, the top of my sky to be darker. Maybe this is like some mid-afternoon skiing. Now I'm going to come back in with my purple brush to help blend those colors. And finally, I'm going to come in with Blueprint Sketch at the top. And now this is really vibrant ink, so I'm tapping off before I come in on my panel. And then I can just blend it out. Now I'm switching the mask around to cover the top part so that I can add the shading down below in gray. And I'm using Lost Shadow Distress ink for that. And these are adding kind of like little ski marks that you would find on a powder day. I think it's such a cute play on powder day. Look at that. All right, now I'm coming in with the second stencil to color the trees. And I'm going to add a mask to cover the bottom of my panel. And there's a little bit of sky peeking out through that cloud up there, so I'm just going to cover that with a little piece of masking tape. I'm coming in with peeled paint to color the trees. This is a color that I don't use very often, but it turned out to be a great pairing with those PinkFresh inks. Now this is Spanish Moss, speaking of PinkFresh inks. And I'm coming in with my 2+ brush and just shading at the bottom of these trees just, you know, to add some shading and a little bit of detail. So here's what it looks like. And now I have this in my plastic little, it's not a bucket, it's like a scrapbook paper container. And I like to use this when I spray stuff. I'm using Picket Fence Distress Spray Stain, and I just kind of drip a bunch onto an acrylic block. And I use this old fan brush and flick it. And that's how I've been doing my white splatters lately. So that's how the sky looks. Now I'm going to come back in with that tree stencil, and I'm going to splatter the trees. Now you're probably wondering why I just didn't splatter the whole panel. You know, I didn't need to use the stencil. For some reason, I just didn't want the splatter on the white areas. But I also wanted to show you how you could do this. You know, maybe you want the splatter in the sky to be a different color than the splatter on the trees. Now here I'm just showing you how I switched from limoncello and citron to citron and bay leaf, just to make the sweater and the hat a little bit darker. I did that off screen. And I'm coloring the skis with the faded jeans. And I'm coming in with the faded jeans first, just on the bottom to give some shading on the bottom of the skis. And I'm going to blend that out. I'm also coming in with shaded lilac just because I needed that little bit of purple in the skis. And I'm just coloring the ski poles with Rocky Slope, again from PinkFresh Studio. And now I'm taking my 2+ brush and just hitting that little small part of the ski pole at the bottom. All right, now here is the scarf. I said I was going to do something different. Now there's a little, I'm going to call it a notch. It's really easy to clip these apart. There are a lot of dies that Waffle Flower makes where you can do this. And so I'm just going to clip this apart so that I can make this scarf even more dimensional looking. I'm just kind of being careful to go along the lines of where that little notch was. So I'm going to put this piece back in the stencil and color it with that sheer freesia. And now it's in that part with where you put the detail. And I use the hydrangea again. And so now when I layer it, that piece in the back looks even more like it's in the back. It just looks more dimensional. Now at this point I wanted him to have a tongue, but I didn't realize that there was actually a die for this. So I improvised and used a couple stencils together in order to isolate this tongue shape. I started with the shape for the nose to create that curve of the tongue at the top. And then I used a cloud. Like I said, I was improvising. I knew what shape I wanted. So I'm going to come in with Kitsch Flamingo and color this up. Now remember, this is going over some light gray ink in the mouth, which is why I used my Distress Oxides, because they have pigment ink in them. So here's the result, and I think I did a pretty good job. All right, so I still felt like this white dog was not standing out enough against the white background, so I'm adding black to the edges of the die cut, again, just where it's white. And I also use my shader 2+ brush to get into hard to reach areas to add that shading. And hey, guess what? I found the tongue. It's this little piece right here. And probably when it fell out the first time, I thought it was just trash, or, you know, I didn't even see it. Now, somehow the actual tongue is about the same size as the fake one that I made. But I do like the look of having the die cut, so I did use it. These are the Pawder Day sentiments. This does come as a combo set with dies, but they're also sold separately. And this is where I pulled my sentiment from. And I wanted to show you how I did his hand. I cut an extra hand and cut it into 2 pieces, leaving a gap in the middle for the ski pole. I wanted a nice level area to add that hand. Otherwise, it would look weird from the sides. And in case you haven't noticed, I'm very obsessed with how things look from the side. So I'm often coloring, inking up the edges of my die cuts so that you can't see the color underneath. And here I can attach the pole. Now I did put a very tiny piece of black foam square onto the bottom part of that pole so it would be level, because there are, several levels of dog that this is on top of. And now I can add my hand and it's nice and level. And now I'm adding that that second pole. Again, there's little foam tape on the bottom of that pole. Now this is the new Snowflake Background Die, and I've just cut it from white cardstock. And I'm going to pop these little snowflakes out of here and add them to the sky just as a cute little detail. Now here I'm going to pop all of these out into this tray. And these are going to be great to have on hand when I want to add snowflakes to a card. I will end up putting these in a small Ziploc bag or something, and then I'm sure I will promptly lose it. But, it's a thought that counts. All right, these are some of the snowflakes that this cuts. And I did end up using these on the second card. Now I'm just playing around with ideas for what I'm going to do with this panel. This is one of those distress oxides on glossy paper panels that I made the other week, and that looks pretty cool on top of there. I also have this paper from Waffle Flower that's already glued on a card base. That's really cool too. And then there's always just a nice, bold, clean look, which I love. You'll have to wait until later in the month to see what I do with it. I have some ideas. We'll see. And here's the final card, and I just think it's adorable. And, because I live in Colorado, of course, I'm partial to mountains and dogs on skis. And speaking of dogs, look at these cuties. Now, I'm going to start by showing the Snow Angel cat duo. This is a die and stencil set. And I've already stenciled the cat details onto the cats, which I cut from gray cardstock. And there's a little die that cuts the mouth and nose detail, and I already glued those on. Now here's the stencil that comes with this. And it makes these little snow angel shadows. Now here's the stencil to add the cat details. These dies are mirror images of each other. So to stencil the other die, you just flip the stencil over like I just did. All right, now I fully intended on making this a cat card, but you're going to see how it all went wrong, mainly because I wasn't paying attention. And by the way, that happens a lot. But I left this in so that you don't make the same mistake. So remember how I said these were mirror images, and that means that the stencil needs to be flipped over. But I didn't flip it over. So you'll see in a bit. And so this one is actually right. Okay, so I'm going to stencil this top one. And I'm just using, I think it's tumbled glass Distress Oxide. Okay, so it might be kind of hard to see because this is light blue ink, but one of the shadows obviously doesn't fit the cat because I didn't flip it over. Oops. Now this only took a minute or two to stencil, so it's not a huge loss, but I was mad at the cats for doing that to me, so I did pull out the dogs. This is the Snow Angel Pup Duo. And now I'm being very careful here. You can see I flip the stencil over and I'm lining it up with where I had the pup positioned and just quickly stenciling this. Now you can also use the stencil without the die. That's what that other pup is, that pup on the right of the stencil. Now there's also these cute paw prints on the stencil, so I'm adding those in the corner. I think it's so cute because, the pups do need to walk out there to get to the snow to make their snow angels. So again, I'm using that same tumbled glass ink, but doing it a little bit lighter. All right, now Christmas stripes paper from Waffle Flower, one of my favorites. Of course, I'm going to use pattern paper when I can. And here are my pups. I cut them from gray cardstock. And again, here's the stencil for the detail, and you have to flip it to put the detail on the other dog. And I will do that off screen. Now this die has a separate little piece for the mouth and a separate piece for the nose. And I will cut the mouth from pink cardstock, but I'll use these little gray noses here and ink blend them black for the noses. These are the Snow Angel sentiments. Again, there are matching dies that you can get as a combo or separately. I think these sentiments are so cute. And I love the one I picked. Now you can see that I embossed that sentiment with white embossing powder. And by the way, that white deckled panel that I stenciled on is from last month's Fringe Frames Die. And you can also see on the sides of this panel the snowflakes from the Snowflake Background Die that I added. All right, now I did want to show you, this is the Cool Cat Die-n-stencil. So if you like the skiing, but you prefer cats, here is the cat skier. So again, there's a sweater, there's a scarf, there's the skis, and there's poles, and there's a hat. There's a little bit of a different hat on this guy. All right, now I don't want to forget the little cats that I had already made for the snow angels. And I thought they looked kind of cute, like they're jumping for joy. So this is just an idea I'm playing around with, but again, join me later in the month to see what becomes of this. Now let's jump into some of the specials going on. This is the gift with purchase for this release, the Miss You word die. You see it right there. And you just add $60 or more to your cart and you get this. Now every month they have this special gift with purchase. But let's get to what is coming in November that is special. Because November is always special for us card makers. Now, before I get into what's coming, I do want to let you know that there's a giveaway today over on my Instagram feed. Waffle Flower is giving a $20 gift certificate to one of my followers. So be sure to head over there, follow me if you're not already following, and then leave a comment for your chance to win. There's a link to my Instagram feed in the description below. And I just want to note this giveaway does end on November 7th, 2025. All right, let's talk about what Waffle Flower has planned for the holidays. Some of it's already underway with gifts with every order. I think you get to choose a free gift for every $30 in your cart. And then there's the big grab bag event, which starts on November 15th and goes through the end of the month. And then, of course, there's the big Black Friday sale that we all look forward to. I will have a special code where you'll receive an additional 10% savings during that sale. And by the way, my code, which is just my name, Allison, it's always good for 10% off your purchases at Waffle Flower, but you can only use it once. So if you've already used my code before, you'll still be able to use it to get that additional savings over Black Friday. Now, I do want to note that the sale includes releases up through April of this year. So this Pawder Day release will not be included in the Black Friday sale. All right, so that is it for me today. I will be back again tomorrow with another video. I really appreciate you being here today. Leave me a comment. Let me know, do you love this release as much as I do? I'd love to hear. And I will see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.